Today we're going to talk about some of the things that you probably didn't know about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre game and the extent that Gunn went to bring us an authentic experience is pretty freaking crazy, and some of these things might honestly surprise you. And while this game has had some technical issues at launch, this has to be one of the most fun experiences that I've had with a video game all year long. So if you like this type of content and appreciate what I do here, consider subscribing and hit your notifications. Let's go ahead and jump into the first one, which is the original roles that some of the original characters from the 1974 movie play in the game. Most notably, Hitchhiker. His real name is Edwin Neal, and he is actually the voice actor for Hitchhiker in the game.
There'll be lots of meat tonight. Yeah, good meat.
With the new way people put out of jobs. You do that? Look.
Also, another big one. You got to remember, this is a movie from, over 50 years ago. And so when that much time passes by and you're trying to gather information, it can be difficult. A lot of the times the original minds behind the game are either no longer with us or super disconnected from the franchise, but it wasn't like that in this case. And so Gunn worked heavily with the original screenwriter, Kim Heinkel. And by doing that, they were able to come up with characters that were supposed to be in this universe like Sissy. And by working so closely with one of the original minds, they were able to see, what were the conditions like when they were filming this movie so long ago. And so that gave them a huge advantage, in my opinion, being able to recreate this as authentically as possible. Another fun side note is that Kane Hodder actually plays Leatherface in this game. Now, Kane Hodder has never technically been credited as playing Leatherface, but in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, he was the stunt guy for Leatherface. And so, and there's actually a couple scenes where Leatherface is played by Kane Hodder. And so that's kind of cool that he kind of makes a return to the game. And there's really no better guy, I think, that could play Leatherface than Mr. Jason himself. Another interesting thing is when you escape the family house and you get down the long driveway and you make it to the road, you'll see an armadillo in the middle of the street. That armadillo is one of the opening shots in the 1974 movie. Speaking of locations, Gunn and those guys and that team went to Texas, and over 10,000 pictures were taken in reference to the original shooting locations. Not only that, the type of flowers, wildlife, shrubs, all of that is from that location in Texas. And so when you see these things, just know that these aren't just random trees and shrubs and brushes and, flowers and stuff. These are actually things from that part of the country, which is pretty crazy. The crew also went as far as to obtain an original chainsaw from the 1970s. Not the original chainsaw, but the original manufacturer chainsaw from the 70s. And so they had to get people to work on these things to make sure that they would work, which is cool in and of itself, but also the extent that they went to be able to get these sounds from that chainsaw. And so as opposed to just giving you a generic chainsaw revving sound, right, whenever you start it up or when you're actually revving it up as Leatherface, they went through layers and loops in that audio to give you acceleration and deceleration in the chainsaw. So it has its own engine, similar to the engine in car games, right, where you have your throttle and all of that. That's the same type of mechanic that's in the chainsaw itself. Also, you'll notice things around the map, specifically in the family house, like the wall of deer skulls, right? And obviously the chickens that can give away your position. These are all things from the original film. And so if you've never watched the 1974 film, it is definitely worth your time. But you got to remember, when you watch movies from the 70s and 80s, specifically slashers, they seem corny by today's standards. So if you don't have an appreciation for that stuff, just remind yourself that these things, a lot of these things had never been shown in cinema up to that point. And so it really freaked people out at the time, because a lot of this stuff was seen as immoral to show people, right? Even if everybody knew it was fake, people didn't treat it that way, right? There's accounts of people passing out in movie theaters, and there was a lot of people really freaked out over this movie. And so you got to appreciate it for that and kind of look at it through the lens of the time period that it was created in. There's some other things that are easier to miss that you may not have noticed. The generator is set up just like it is in the movie. It's got the big oil drum that's, constantly feeding it, that sits right over the top of it. Cook uses a broken broomstick, and the way he breaks that in the movie is by beating the final girl Sally with it, eventually until it breaks. They feed Grandpa in the game, and this happens again in the movie. They cut Sally's finger, and they put her finger in Grandpa's mouth, and he starts sucking her blood. It's kind of gross, but hey, it's a direct reference. There's also things like the front of the gas station that Cook is working at that looks pretty much like the gas station in the game. And also the back door of the family house. There's actually a set of steps that goes up to that back door, and a little set of bushes right next to it where, again, you can hide in the game as well. And the last thing that I'll talk about in this particular video is Gunn only has the rights to the 1974 film. So I'll see people specifically, ask for different characters on the Facebook page and all that. And unfortunately, as far as I know, that's not going to happen with this film. And trust me, I'd love to see Sheriff Hoyt, played from the 03 remake. Ronald Lee Ermey, God rest his soul, awesome guy. And I would love to play as that character, right? I would probably only play as him. And the many different locations, the many different Leatherface skins, and, things that they could do if they were to expand outside of that original film. So it makes me a little concerned about the growth of the game. But fortunately, just like characters Sissy and Johnny, and them having access to the original screenwriter, I believe that these guys can come up with some really cool locations. And who knows, man, maybe because the game has done pretty well, they can get other licenses from, the other franchises and stuff, and slowly start to work that stuff in. I'm sure that's a pain, dude. I don't know that I would want to do that. But the extent that these guys went to create this game, I would not put it past them, man, because they really took a lot of time and given us an authentic Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I love to see some of the things that you've seen in the game or that you saw in the movie, references maybe that I missed right here. Leave those down below. If you like what I do, again, maybe you'll like one of these other videos I've done here recently. See you all in the next one. And as always, hold them down.